you. Very nice. So this is our last session for a month. So cling to every word. Right? All right, so we're going to talk about Mahayana Buddhism tonight. So I'm going to switch to screen sharing for a moment. There we go. So we've already quoted the writings of Reginald Ray several times, and we'll be reading his thoughts many times tonight and in the coming classes. So I thought I should introduce you to him. This is a guy with a lovely face. Anyway, so I have the deepest respect for him. As you will see, he has clarified Buddhism for me in a way that no other writer has been able to do. He's a university professor. I think they call him Professor Reggie. Anyway, he's quite the guy. I can stop sharing for a moment. Yeah. So there's a Tibetan saying that just as every valley has its own language, so every teacher has his own doctrine. While this is an exaggeration on both counts, it does indicate the diversity to be found within Buddhism and the important role of a teacher in mediating a received tradition and adapting it to the needs and the personal transformations of his pupils. This diversity prevents or at least strongly hinders generalizations about Buddhism as a whole. Nevertheless, it is a diversity which Mahayana Buddhists have gloried in. They see it not as a scandal, but as something to be proud of, indicating a richness and multifaceted ability to aid the spiritual quest of all sentient beings. From this, it becomes clear that there are many Buddhisms. The central division is between its Hinayana and Mahayana forms. There are also countless subdivisions within these two primary branches or vehicles. We have quietly passed over the many schools that scholars have detected within the Hinayana vehicle, but we'll be investigating the two turnings found within Mahayana. In addition, we will examine some of the features of a third vehicle that developed in Tibet, the Vajrayana, and that will probably be our first class at the end of March, sorry, not May. So Mahayana Buddhism arose in northwestern India in the 1st century after the millennium. As we've seen before, it defined itself as against the prevailing earlier branch of Buddhism, the Hinayana. All right, so now we're going to start reading. Ding, ding, ding. So I think I'll start at the beginning of my list here and ask Margaret if she would read our first one.
Sure. Reading 1. When the Mahayanists took their name, Mahayana means the great vehicle, the conservative older Buddhism unwillingly accepted the name Hinayana, the lesser vehicle. Vehicle yana here refers to a means of transportation, such as a raft, a ferry, or a carriage. If the crossing of the river analogy is used for Buddhist salvation, then Mahayana is the great ferry or raft, and Hinayana the lesser ferry or raft. Besides the rather derogatory juxtaposition of great and lesser, which the Theravadins dislike, there is an implication, sometimes pointed out, of big and little, the Mahayana being the big raft transporting whole groups of believers with a pilot in charge, and the Hinayana, the little raft, for one at a time or individual transportation. From John Noss, Man's Religions.
Okay, thank you. So we will recall that the Pali Canon referred to Gautama as the 4th Buddha. Mahayana Buddhists greatly expanded this idea that he was not the only Buddha, and went on to explore the possibility that there were actually countless others in many states of readiness. This led to their belief that some Buddhas had come to earth already, some had remained in the heavens, and some were still in the making, being the Buddhas of the future, such as Maitreya, who we believe is probably Baha'u'llah. This last group were called Bodhisattvas. These are Buddhas in training, if you like. This myth-making was taken even further when the Mahayanists claimed to have recovered the names and histories of these other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. From a rational point of view, such claims would seem to be hard to justify. Where did such knowledge come from? We need to consider the process by which these names and histories were discovered with open minds. All right, so let me see. I have to open up my list of participants, but I can't see it. Okay, is Leslie here? I'm sorry, I'm unable to see the list of participants from where I'm at the moment.
No, Leslie's not here, sweetie.
Okay, so how about David Erickson then for number 2?
Okay. Reading 2. How could the names and histories of these beings be recovered without the proper documents and other historical traces? In Oriental lands, those who give full credence to intuitions, revelations, and insight into past and future through trance visions would regard such a question as barrenly skeptical.
Yeah. Intuitions, revelations, insights, trans visions. These are important sources of knowledge in religions which treasure non-physical reality. Given the centuries of dedicated Buddhist commitment to meditation, it's only logical that its followers would experience many of the same inner worlds. As we have seen previously in part 1 of this course, in which we studied Islamic mysticism, the imaginal realm, the Alamo Mithal, is highly diverse, richly detailed, and declared to be more real than events taking place in the physical world. I suspect that dedicated Buddhists access the same or similar realms over the centuries. From my reading, I believe that such non-physical meditative experiences are the source of Mahayana literature. How else are we to account for the veritable flood of profound sacred knowledge that inundated Mahayana Buddhists, seemingly out of nowhere, beginning in the 1st century CE? Now, this is from this graphic, the Mahayana texts, as you can see on the bottom half here, can be classified into 3 categories. And here they are: the sutras, the shastras, and the tantras. The sutras contain the Buddha's own words and teachings. So this is where it's heretical for Mahayana Buddhists to say that they have access to Buddha's own words that aren't in the Pali Canon. So that's where you have to start thinking about maybe they're accessing it through one of the non-physical worlds. Just to give them the benefit of the doubt. Otherwise, you're just going to be sweeping away thousands of documents. The Shastras are treatises concerning points of doctrine composed by learned masters. These are commentaries, if you like. And then the Tantras are teachings about spiritual practices for advanced Buddhists. So because these sutras are not found within the Pali Canon, they are immediately considered to be suspect, even invalid, in the eyes of Theravadins. For Mahayanists, these sutras, which quote the words and teachings of the Buddha, were actually observed during meditative states. Does this invalidate them? If you question the reality of the unseen, it must. However, if you visit invisible realms on a regular basis, your perspective on such a question is significantly altered. In the eyes of the followers of Mahayana, These non-physical conversations with the Buddha opened up immeasurable new vistas. The entire universe became radiant with compassionate beings who not only could, but in fact wanted to aid them. Their imaginations had much to feed on. Furthermore, given the presence of innumerable benefactors, prayers were now again possible. The devout were furnished with wall paintings and sculptures as aids to devotion. Salvation was no longer something to be achieved by one's own self-effort. Divine beings with vast stores of merit were eager to share their knowledge, wisdom, and practical advice with the faithful. Much was to flow from this. Not only was the whole face of Buddhism changed for the believer, but its fortunes abroad rapidly improved. Countries that had responded slowly to the appeal of the Theravada doctrines now took up Mahayana teachings with enthusiasm. And because the Mahayana was by its very nature expansive and inclusive, it changed as it moved from place to place. So it's quite different when it reaches China or Korea or Japan than it is in Burma, for instance, or Sri Lanka. The peoples among whom it made its way in reality contributed to its development. And this resulted in the creation of ever more Buddhisms. So not only were there numerous Buddhas in Mahayana Buddhism, by the 4th century CE, there were also 3 bodies of Gautama Buddha to consider. Well, let's see what that's all about. The Trikaya, or 3-body doctrine, is a central framework of Mahayana belief. It sees the Buddha as having 3 aspects or dimensions. The Nirmanakaya, or the transformation body, the Sambhogakaya, or enjoyment body, and the Dharmakaya, or Dharma body. So we're going to talk about what those mean. Not that I have a crystal clear sense of it, but I can quote you from some people who know more about it than I do. Let's go back to our readings. On the most accessible and concrete level, the Buddha manifests as a physical person. Shakyamuni Buddha was thus a human being of flesh and blood. The word Nirmanakaya means created body, but does not refer to the body of an ordinary person, but rather to one who is, so to speak, in the world, but not of the world. Okay, so I think it's Belinda's turn now. Number 3.
There you go.
By virtue of his realization, a Buddha's body has a certain purity, beauty, and power not shared by those of ordinary people. For example, his form gives off a luster and radiance that is hard to look at. His speech is mellifluous and compelling, communicating to others just what they need. And his mind, resting in the enlightened state, brings others naturally into deep peacefulness and a feeling of the isness of the world. And that's your friend Reginald Way.
Sorry, I'm just typing a note to Linda. Okay. So according to Buddhism, while there are other physical Buddhas like Shakyamuni, he is the only one in our world until the future Buddha, Maitreya, appears on earth many thousands of years later. Oh, I see Harold has his hand up. Okay, Harold, talk to me. What do you got?
Yeah, regarding the Trikaya, I once saw a breakdown that spoke of the earthly body, the celestial body, and the ultimate body.
Mhm.
And when you put it in those terms, they don't sound so foreign to, say, Bahai ears or Christian ears or others. For earthly body could be, we could say that the manifestation of God when he was on earth. And the celestial body could be the power of the manifestation to reveal and still influence and shape reality. And then the ultimate body could be, well, Dharmakaya could be ultimate reality, absolute reality, beyond form, beyond comprehension, indivisible, ineffable. In other words, those are not foreign to Baha'i concepts in the slightest.
No.
At least that's the way it looks to me.
Well, are we talking about the two aspects or the two stations of the manifestations of God there, do you think, in the second and third level? The Sambhogakaya would correspond to the distinct nature of the manifestations, whereas the Dharmakaya would be their universal, unified sense.
That could easily be true. And I think you're going to bring that up again when we look at that 5-level chart, with Hahud at the top and Nasud at the bottom.
Yeah.
I'm just saying celestial body instead of Sambhogakaya.
Mhm.
Celestial body is more visualizable and conceivable by people from the West or, say, Islam,
Yeah.
an Islamic point of view. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out.
No, you're raising a good point. And I have to say, though, that one of my agendas is to throw people curveballs and give them some of the terminology that a Buddhist would recognize.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I mean, we can make the interpretation as long as we're sure it's accurate. But I try to stay as true as I can to the Buddhism that I'm reading until such time as I'm ready to try and compare it to the Baha'i faith or another religion. But those are excellent terms. I've seen them used, but I thought I would try using the actual Sanskrit terminology for now. Jack, what are you up to? Oh, he disappeared.
Jack, you're unmuted. There you go.
Okay, yeah. It sounds to me like the impression I'm getting, if we compare the Theravadins with the Mahayanists, that the Buddha for the Mahayana, or the Buddhas, plural, because they had, as you pointed out, these different types of enlightened beings, is a much more transcendent, glorious, divine figure compared to the Theravadins, where Buddha was just sort of an enlightened teacher. So he's much more of a glorified or transcendent figure by comparison in Mahayana. Am I reading that correctly, or am I reading something in there?
Oh, I think you're quite right. That Theravadins tended to think of him as just one of the sannyasins who had gotten lucky and figured out how to get to enlightenment. So he was really just a human being with just figured out how to get past this problem of samsara. But they didn't see him as a transcendent being. You're quite right. But the Mahayanas certainly did.
So the Mahayanas probably, if you like, worshipped, in quotation marks, the Buddha more than the Theravadins, I would guess, as not to the extent that Christians, of course, worship Christ, but there's probably much more of a personal devotion to the Buddha in the Mahayana vehicle, I would suspect. I don't know for sure, but that's what I'm suspecting.
Well, we'll see that in the case of the Bodhisattvas, who are quite numerous. These are regular folks who decide that they would like to become a Buddha in some future eon. And we're going to describe them in some detail. Okay, Lori Hanson-Tripp. You're looking way up. I don't know what that's all about, but way up.
I'm coming off of mute.
if I didn't know what this was referring to, and I had just dropped into the readings when it starts, for his example, his form, we've been spending quite a lot of time this year thinking and talking and contemplating and reading more about Abdu'l-Baha. And to me, that definitely sounds like Abdu'l-Baha to me. So if I was on a quiz show, I'd say, oh, that's Abdu'l-Baha.
When we're talking about which specifically?
In paragraph 3, when it starts describing, reading number 3, when it starts describing, I haven't got the in
Okay,
front
so
of
we're
me.
talking about the luster and the radiance. It's hard to look at.
Yeah, and just knows just what you need and all that sort of thing. It's sort of somehow that reminds me of what we've been doing with Abdu'l-Baha all this year.
Interesting.
Mark, Avalokiteshvara is one of the most important bodhisattvas, especially for Tibetan Buddhism, Avalokiteshvara. And there are some Baha'i Buddhist scholars like Fosdar, who says Avalokiteshvara is Abdu'l-Baha. So in other words, when we're talking about the mysterious station of Abdu'l-Baha, to Buddhists, we can say that Baha'is understand Abdu'l-Baha to have a station like Avalokiteshvara, the celestial Buddha of wisdom and compassion. You know, I'm always trying to draw comparisons because that's to me the purpose of studying Buddhism as a Baha'i, so that I can help build bridges to other people. I know you're trying to sort of give us the specificity of Buddhism itself to sort of encounter it on its own terms.
Yeah.
So, but Baha'is can hardly not share what they understand about bridges between Buddhism and the Baha'i faith. I won't say too much more about this, but there's no way I'm not going to draw bridges. No way.
Well, I'm certainly not wanting you to stop doing that. I think that's an extremely important aspect of what we're doing in this class. But it's good it's coming from you rather than from me at this point. I'm going to try and put some of that together in a future class. But yeah, okay, so I think Belinda had her hand up, if I'm not mistaken.
Hi. When I read this, it reminded me the part about luster and radiance, hard to look at. Reminded me of, I've heard that description applied to Baha'u'llah, that there were times when it was hard to look at it.
Yeah.
And I'd also run across somewhere or other, and I can't remember where, description of Moses, that Moses went around wearing a veil because his face was so radiant, it blinded people.
That's right.
And so this is not an uncommon, an unusual description of a manifestation of God having this kind of presence. We know Baha'u'llah actually veiled himself in some, not necessarily with a regular veil, but
Yeah.
in some other way he could veil himself in the presence of certain people. No doubt there was at least one occasion, I think, where Jesus was so radiant his disciples couldn't look at him. And I don't know of a similar story about Muhammad, but I'm sure there is one.
If I may say something, there was I remember something with Baha'u'llah. I don't know exactly where this is, but and what the circumstances were, but he told a believer,
Between my fingers.
yeah, no, well, there's that one too, to look at him.
Oh, yeah.
And the believer wouldn't. Baha'u'llah said, "Look at me." So he did. And I don't know what Baha'u'llah said to him after that, but the believer was so overwhelmed that he actually got sick and he couldn't go out for a whole week.
Something like that.
So then Baha'u'llah told somebody to tell a believer to read the long healing tablet. So I mean, this in itself, is really, it's quite overwhelming.
Okay, so let's talk about these different bodies. So the Sambhogakaya, the enjoyment body, the celestial body, is the one we're going to do. So we're not left bereft during this long interval between physical Buddhas. At this moment, there are many other Buddhas who live in the timeless realm of the Sambhogakaya, according to Buddhism. These Sambhogakaya Buddhas have a glorious spiritual form that can be seen by realized people, but are normally invisible to ordinary people like ourselves. Some of these Sambhogakaya Buddhas were once human beings, while others have been celestial Buddhas since the beginning. While we cannot normally see them, we can certainly supplicate them, and their responses can appear powerfully in our lives. In Tibetan Buddhism, a number of celestial Buddhas are particularly important. Although these Buddhas are alike as fully enlightened Sambhogakaya deities, they also have their own special individualities in terms of what they provide to human beings. So let's take a look at some of these guys. Maybe I could turn to Alan for this one, number 4.
There are 5 Buddhas that are organized according to the principle of Mandala. Vairocana, the Buddha of all-encompassing space, in the center. Akshobhya, the immovable one, in the east. Ratnasambhava, the source of all generosity, in the south. Amitabha, the embodiment of love and compassion, in the west. And Amigasidi, essence of accomplishment and transformation, in the north. There are also quite a number of important female Buddhas. In the mandalas, at each of the 4 directions, there stands a female Buddha, that consort or feminine counterpart of each of the Buddhas, such as Lakana, Pandara, and Tara. That's Reginald Ray in Indestructible Truth.
I have to mention this word here, Amitabha. You'll notice the last 4 letters are ABHA, the Abha kingdom. There's a direct link here, I think. And these consorts are very important too. They appear all over the place. There are many, many, many of them. It's a bit confusing when you're first dipping your toe into this subject area. Anyway.
Mark, it's very clear what's happening here. They're saying that the Buddha is a cosmic being. He fills the earth. So they've got him in every direction. He's everywhere. So they're aiming at the cosmic nature of the Buddha. I mean, this is big. They're saying he's a great metaphysical being who fills the earth. So this is very different from the Theravadins, right?
Absolutely right. Yeah. But there's also that sense of the imaginal realm about the whole thing. That these are entities that you don't see unless you acquire the aptitude to see. Right? So it's incumbent on you to, or on your teacher, to help you to learn how to see. Or this will just be a matter of faith. So this range of individualized celestial being Buddhas is reminiscent of the names and attributes of God found in the Bahai sacred writings. But even more, it reminds us of the two stations Baha'u'llah attributes to the manifestations of God: station of oneness and the station of distinction. Are we then justified in comparing parts of the fivefold scheme of Islam and the Baha'i faith with the three bodies of Buddhahood doctrine in Mahayana Buddhism? If so, here is how I think they might align. Now, just a second, what did I do here? First, let's refresh our memory of the five realms of being in the Baha'i faith. Well, this is the diagram that Jack inserted into his Journal Baha'i Studies article way back in 1992. I have used it many, many times. Okay, so this is, I hope, just a memory for you that you're going to activate again. So here we are down at the bottom in the world of Nasut, the world of nature and the world of humanity, or the physical world. Every night we go to the realm of Malakut, the world of dreams, but it's also an angelic realm, the world of execution, and where the concourse on high resides. And there's that word Abha, the kingdom of Abha. So this is not just the world of dreams, this is also where Baha'is go in the next world. The realm of Jabarut up here isn't something that most of us will have access to. Some will, but most won't. So that's the angelic realm, the world of command, Amr, the world of power, or Jabr, and the world of divine names and attributes, the all highest paradise. So when you're thinking about the manifestations of God, the realm of Malakut seems to me to be the realm of distinction, that and Nasut. This is where they are distinct individuals. But when you're talking about them in their unification, it's the realm of Jabarut. That's the world of divine names and attributes. And then there's the next level, which is the level of Lahut, which is beyond the manifestations, I suspect. This is well, to some extent, though, I have to say I've puzzled over this for many years. I'm not quite certain what the relationship is between the manifestations of God and the first will, or the primal will up here. I've gone back and forth on that many times, but for now, let's just consider it as above this realm of Jabarut.
Well, Mark, the primal will, I've too puzzled about it for years. And the best thing that occurred to me is, remember when you taught your course on the primal will? So I've called it here the first will instead of the primal will, but it's the same thing. I think the primal will is kind of the essence for all the manifestations, whatever that is. I mean, I don't pretend to understand it, but it's whatever, it's the force that generates all the manifestations. It's the first thing that emanates from God.
It's also the creator of the whole Shmir. Everything in the world is created by the first.
Yes, yes.
And then you'll see there's a darker line here, and then the way is barred, to seek it is impiety. And that is God, or Hahut, where all you can say is the word he is.
He is God.
That's all you can say. But as soon as you try and say anything further than that, you're in error.
But Mark, what are the Buddhist terms that correspond with this level?
Okay, well, now that brings me to my next diagram here. So let's try to figure out where the three Buddhas of the body should be placed, given the descriptions we've just read. So I'm suggesting this is only a tentative alignment. Okay, I haven't, this is preliminary as far as I'm concerned. I haven't read enough about the three Buddhas in order to be able to feel like I'm really sure of what I'm doing here. So here's what I have come up with. I think it's fairly clear that the Nirmanakaya, the physical body or the earthly body of the Buddha, is equivalent to our Nasu. But because of the special nature of the Buddha and the brilliant light that's emanating from him, etc., I'm not certain whether he is also partly in Malakut. So I'm not sure about this equivalence right now. And I'm not sure about these. Maybe this should be Sambhogakaya here. But I think these last two are probably correct. Lahut and Pahut are probably equal to Dharmakaya. Okay, Harold, what are you thinking?
Yeah, you know, there's a text called The Perfection of Wisdom. And I just want to read a sentence or two from it. It says, the Dharma Dhatu is the root of all. It is indivisible and unspeakable. It is the original unborn suchness, untainted by words, Dharma Dhatu. So I think Dharma Dhatu is a better term for Hahut. It's
Okay.
also translated absolute reality about which we can say nothing.
Right.
Or it's also called the formless form, or that from which all forms come, but has no form itself. Anyway, Dharma, and Nagarjuna is one of the suggested authors of this text. In any case, it's considered scriptural by most Mahayana, the perfection of wisdom.
Yep.
And Dharma Dhatu, I think, is a much better term for Hahut. Anyway, that's my opinion.
But there's probably an overlap between Dharma Dhatu and Dharmakaya. And where exactly that breaks down, I'm not sure.
Dharmakaya is at least expressible and visualizable to some extent.
Okay.
Dharma Dhatu is beyond that. At least that's my understanding.
Okay, well, that would make a difference then, that Lahut would in fact be Dharmakaya and this would be Dharma Dhatu. Well, that's interesting. Anybody else got any thoughts so far about this tentative little chart?
I think what Harold's suggesting sounds right to me, Mark.
Mhm. Okay. Well, I mean, that may be as much as we can, achieve at this moment. Boy, Buddhism is a great thing to teach you humility, I'm telling you. I have so much to learn. I've been, I've read 5,000 pages or so in the last few months, and I still feel like I'm a baby in this subject area. So
Yeah.
bear with me here, guys.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I don't know if this applies or not, but a few minutes ago, what went through my mind was that in Sa'idi's book, The Gate of the Heart, there is a tablet of the Babs where this whole thing about free will
Yep.
comes into the whole thing. And so there was a lot of argumentation going on, and the Bab tried to explain, that the will of God is still not by any means, the essence of God or what have you. And it's something you have to read. and but it's in Saidi, and this whole thing. He said that humans still have free will. That it had to do with the whole thing of determination. Are things determined or not? You know, do we, you know, so in the sense that we do have any free will, or are we just simply automatons? You know, and but you know, it seems obvious to me that we do have, that we are left free in this sense. You know, for example, to obey or not to obey, you know, go on the right path or the wrong path or whatever. And so, but I just wanted to point out that the Bob has quite a bit to say about what we're talking about here.
I agree with that. That's a profound book, that one that you're referring to, The Gate of the Heart. That really is worth reading 4 or 5 times in your lifetime. Largely because of the fact that it has so many new translations of the Bob's writings that we can't access anywhere else, even if they are provisional.
Now, Mark David's talking about the 5 stages of creative action.
Right.
That's how Sayadaw. And once again, it's interesting that the 5 pops up again like it does in the 5 levels of being, and the Bob has 5 stages of creative action, and will is one of them.
Yeah.
There's term, there's book, there's a couple of others, and that's the one that David's referring to. That's in his schema of the 5 stages of creative action in the Bob's writings.
Mhm. Okay, well, I'm looking at my timer and I'm saying, oh, I got to move here. So let's talk about the Dharma body. Maybe some of this will become a little clearer. The third and ultimate body of a Buddha is the Dharmakaya, the body of reality itself. Not only is the Dharmakaya beyond all physicality, it is beyond all form. It is the mind essence of the Buddhas of the 3 times, past, present, and future. The state of unimpeded emptiness and clarity. The enlightenment that includes everything that goes on and on without end. This is a really important concept, particularly in Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism. In addition, the Dharmakaya is nothing other than the essence of our own mind, which has been covered with obscuration since beginningless time. Sorry, Linda, could you turn off my hosting? I'm seeing everybody as they're coming in and it's bothering me quite a bit. Anyway, okay, so it's the essence of our own mind, which has been covered with obscurations since beginningless time, and which will eventually shed those obscurations. So we're talking about here your Buddha nature, deep, deep down inside, hidden away by all this stuff on top. On one level, the 3 bodies of a Buddha are completely beyond us. They are inconceivably far from our present state and lie unimaginably far into the future. Okay, let's see if Lori would read number 5 for us.
Reading number 5. From our perspective as ordinary people, the Nirmanakaya of Shakyamuni is gone forever. We are too insensitive to see the Shambhakaya, and the Dharmakaya is completely hidden from us. Thus, as ordinary people, we have and can expect to have little or no experience of the 3 kayas.
Okay. At the same time, though, in another way, the 3 kayas are as close to us as can be, for they reside within us as our Buddha nature. They are thus the very basis of our personality and our very being. And that's number 6. So that maybe Heather Harvey could read.
In Vajrayana Buddhism, in fact, we can begin to see how the whole mechanism of ego is a defensive reaction to the 3 kayas within us. We are so ego-driven, in fact, because we are subliminally aware that within us, on fire and literally bursting to get out, are the 3 kayas.
Now that's interesting. There's a dynamic there that you might not have expected. On fire and literally bursting to get out. There's another way to think about the 3 bodies of Buddhahood. It may be helpful to compare them with our own waking, dreaming, and non-dreaming states of consciousness. Okay, how about Ingrid? Is she here tonight?
No, Ingrid's not here tonight.
Okay, how about Lisa?
A simile of the trikaya is that of the 3 mental states of waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. The waking state corresponds to the physical limitations of the nirmakaya, a dreaming to the relative freedom from space and time of the sambhakaya, and dreamless sleep to the total freedom of the dharmakaya. That these 3 states are experienced by the same person and yet are different symbolizes that the 3 bodies are neither the same nor different. The unity of the trikaya is sometimes taught as a 4th aspect.
Good luck with that.
Sabbakaya, the Sanskrit essential body.
Svabhava, this part of the word means the self.
Okay.
And the kaya is the body. So it's the essential self that we're talking
Right.
about.
Okay.
Thanks, Lisa. Sorry to throw all these terms at you.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's actually, I think, helpful. Having the waking, dreaming, and non-dreaming states as a comparison. And that probably would be helpful when we come back to that diagram or the chart where we're comparing the 5 realms with the 3 Buddhas. Just a note to myself. Okay, let's talk about something else. In the view of Tibetan Buddhism, Shakyamuni Buddha gave 3 relatively distinct cycles of teaching in the course of his life. Each of these turnings of the wheel of Dharma was unprecedented and groundbreaking. The first turning, as we have seen, corresponds to the Hinayana portion of the path. The second turning, which highlights emptiness, and the third turning, which focuses on the Buddha nature within everyone, correspond to stages on the Mahayana path. Each turning is a presentation of a view appropriate to a particular level of training and understanding. Each provides a conceptual orientation on the basis of which one can progress more deeply in one's meditation practice.
No.
No? I don't know who that was. Okay, sometime after presenting the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, the Buddha promulgated the second turning. Okay, Bill Kelly, how about this number 8?
In places such as Vulture Peak near Rajagriha, and chiefly to the communities of the Bodhisattvas, the Buddha revealed, this is hard.
The English, just to the English.
The Bodhisattva basket of a greater vehicle, which extensively teaches the ineffable, unthinkable, inexpressible reality of just what is, whereby all things from form to omniscience are totally divorced from substantial existence.
Well, this is touching on a vast topic that is difficult to understand, and intentionally so. Totally divorced from substantial existence. Right? So what we're talking about is the inexpressible, or the ineffable, or the unthinkable. So these are intended to break us of our concepts, of our intellectual concepts. That there's a reality out there which occurs whether or not we have any conception of it. And in fact, our conceptions are almost always wrong about what it is. They blinker us to the point where we can hardly see that reality at all. So that's what the goal is going to be of Mahayana Buddhism, is to help us actually perceive that reality without the benefit of concepts. Okay, so is that David or Belinda that wants to
That's
talk?
me. It's me.
Okay.
Well, I just, you know, I mean, not that I know anything, but, you know, we go through the world as it is, you know, on Earth, you know, as is, everything is the way it should be, and so on and so forth. And you know, we don't realize that not everything, you know, you see, you know, is apparent, or that what we see is apparent. And this is something that a lot of people don't even want to consider, even if they think of it at all. And so the whole thing that, and this is just the starter, you know, that the world of invisibility is something that the physical world is premised on. Okay, without the visible world, you know, there can be no. No, what I meant is, without the invisible world, without the unseen, there can be no visible or seen world at all. And so that everything, including ourselves, depends on the invisible realm or realms.
Well,
And
that's a bit of a,
the universe itself is the same.
yeah, that's a revolutionary idea, though, for us who think that we're the center of the universe, and that physical reality is the be all and the end all.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're upsetting that whole notion, aren't you? You're turning it upside down
I guess so.
by saying that what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is something that, I mean,
What's the word I'm looking for?
there's nothing, you know, that hasn't been thought of before, you know, but I came across this when I was working on a long poem many years ago. And so that this whole idea of invisibility came through. And this is something that I've been sort of conscious of for a long time.
It depends on which eyes you're using. That's one of the concepts in Sufism, which I felt was very helpful. Because we always are using our physical eyes, but there are other eyes that we use. When we're dreaming, we have a completely different set of eyes.
Yeah.
Right? And when you're communing with God, you have a different set of eyes. So each of these levels of consciousness, if you like, is equipped with the tools that you need in order to be able to interact with other beings or powers or whatever in those worlds. But in our case, because we've paid so little attention to those worlds, they're not developed. We're not very good at it. We're just, if we access those worlds at all, we don't really know what to do when we're there. So these are very challenging ideas that we're just starting to introduce here. As I say, they're quite revolutionary for most people, and they make your brain hurt. And it's quite deliberate that they do that. That's the intention. They're trying to get you to stop thinking about it. They want you to experience it raw.
Mark, would it be helpful? Like I like to think of the big picture and then try to narrow it down.
Okay.
It seems to me that what's going on here is that the Mahayana Buddhists are mapping out the interior world and the different states of consciousness. And they're saying that using the Buddha or the Buddhas as different archetypes, they're saying that, first of all, this is a world of great potential, that the human being hasn't fulfilled his or her potential at all in exploring any of these worlds. So it's like holding up a kind of a, I don't know, it's beckoning us to venture forth into these different realms. You know, I think in some, if we compare it, you know, as Harold is always doing comparisons, and it's natural for the mind to do that, we just do it automatically. I think the Bahai schema is a lot simpler, but I think what it's pointing to here is that there are many different kinds of beings in the universe. And that's a world we don't know a lot about. And we see some of these beings in the world of dreams. I've seen all kinds of strange creatures in the world of dreams, funny ones, happy ones, sad ones. And I think what they're trying to point at here is to get us to stretch, as you said, to think about the possibilities of these alternate states of consciousness that so few of us really attain. So it's like throwing out a challenge, like the Seven Valleys throws out a challenge, you know? I think for me, that's sort of the big picture here. And then you narrow it down into the specific terms that you're using. But it's a world of great potential. And I think, you know, the Hindus as well as the Buddhists, much more than I think the Christians, they mapped out this inner world in great detail. They seem to have a penchant for, I mean, you're saying that we're not supposed to analyze it, we're supposed to experience it. But nonetheless, they do map it out in it seems to me, in very analytical terms. I don't know. That's sort of what some of the things were coming to me as you were explaining.
I like what you're saying, Jack. Yeah. Okay, so is it Belinda now?
No, it's me.
Oh, okay.
Me again. Me again. Yeah. What Jack said gave me another thought, and that is that, look, you know, you can refer to the advancement of humankind in the way that Yogi Fendi has done in relation to the successive appearance of the messengers of God or the manifestations of God. And each time, you know, the eternal spiritual reality is repeated and repeated, but it's also extended and deepened. And according to where humanity is at in every age. And we all know this. But, you know, my feeling is that, you know, in the case of Baha'u'llah, he has opened up a whole vista of things, and in dimension as well, that humankind will experience in the future. I know that when Baha'u'llah refers to the, you know, that the arts and the sciences, for example, and that in the future there will be sciences and there will be arts that we've never ever dreamed of before, ever seen before, you know, and so that all of these things have always been potential in ourselves in terms of our capacity. And so, and that capacity changes, you know, and I think that, you know, like, whereas before, you know, it's only been the relatively few who have understood the more, the inner or the more esoteric meanings of the teachings of the past. That may be true in the future, but I think that more of humanity will come into a reality that will be considerably greater than we've ever had before. And this is the thing about the, you know, the for me of the greater awareness, the greater consciousness, and the advancement of humanity, and you know, what it's all working towards, you know, is, I think, relates to what we've been studying and talking about all along, you know. And so I just you know, wanted to mention this because we don't realize what we're going to become in the future. We're going to become something quite different, in my opinion. So anyway.
Okay. What I'm going to do is pull the plug on my talk, because I feel like I could see in everybody's faces that they're very tired, they're overwhelmed, they don't know what the hell I'm talking about in most people's cases. There are a
Mark,
couple,
why don't you
two or
keep on
three.
going? I
No,
think you
no.
should finish your readings. Yeah, we're all right. We're
No, I don't
okay.
think so. I don't think so. My sense is that that's not the way to go at this point, Harold.
Ask for a show of hands. How many want to finish Mark's readings that he prepared for today so thoughtfully?
Now you've made everybody feel badly. But
You think it's Tarof. I think it's truth.
Yeah, it is a stretch. It is a stretch, Mark, for sure. But I don't think we're totally lost here. I would like, if you're not tired, I would like us to continue, you know, for a little while anyway.
yeah, well, I'm just wondering whether or not there. I mean, I'm hearing from 3 or 4 people only. I'm seeing the rest of you tune out. That's what I'm concerned about. I would rather hear from some of those other people. This is our last chance to talk as a group for a month. So I would like to hear from, I see Sherry's ready to talk, Alan's ready to talk. Okay, so the ones who have talked already don't get to say anything more for the rest of the evening. So let's go to Alan first. Oh, sorry, Sherry had her hand up first. So first Sherry and then Alan.
So one of the thoughts that keeps coming back to me tonight as we work through these materials is, you know, I can remember learning about the faith I was born into, which was Catholicism. I can remember how that faith was taught to me. And I can remember learning about the Bahai faith as an adult. But I'm so curious about people how they learn Buddhism. Like, I guess it goes back to the quote you shared where you were saying you would be 80% of the rational, investigative, scholarly type and 20% of the other. And you always hear stories about people who have accepted the Bahai faith almost like love at first sight, so to speak, because they've had dreams where Abdul Baha appeared, or they connect to a vision of the Bahai Gardens that they'd never seen in print before. But I'm just so curious about the process of embodying Buddhism, and what that would look like for different people. Because based on the material, I feel you have to be a scholar to kind of get into it. Like it's really challenging.
Yeah, but it does help to have the actual experiences. And so as people are becoming engaged with it, they're meditating on a daily basis. They're sitting on a cushion and they're meditating under the guidance of a teacher, which is not what we're doing. So we're missing that embodiment component. So it's all theoretical, and therefore it can seem like it's all ethereal. But in fact, what they're doing is they're talking about experiences that all these masters over centuries and centuries and centuries have experienced. And they welcome you to go through the same process that they've gone through in order to have similar experiences. Okay, so Alan had his hand up. And Bill had his hand up. So let's go to Alan first.
Yeah, I think we're getting into something that is quite precious and often lost on Baha'is. We tend as Baha'is to be focused on creating a new world order. And yet what we're touching on here is that's just the foundation. That's just the beginning. That gives us a time of peace during which we can truly develop our spiritual qualities and our mystical understanding.
Nice.
So I think that we sort of miss that. We think that, oh yeah, once we've got the New World Order in place, everything's done. And actually it's not. That's just the very beginning of transforming generation by generation of Baha'is, generation after generation of human beings, into spiritual mystical souls. And it just completely transforms what the faith is about and why we should hurry up and get the peace done, because that's the simple part. Then comes the hard part of transforming ourselves into spiritual beings.
So we're sort of jumping ahead, if you like, a few thousand years, well, maybe a few hundred years, by focusing on what happens when you do get the time and the quietness necessary to start evolving as a human being. Where are you likely to go? What's next?
I just wanted to make a further reference back to something that was said a couple of weeks back. And that is that in Buddhism, there were reasons why people did not grow spiritually. And one was that they were raised in, I haven't got the terms, raised in hard times, difficult times, times of war and bloodshed, disease, famine. And that's what essentially makes our time at this point so absolutely, totally precious, because we have an environment of peace that can allow the souls to grow spiritually. And we should not forget that it could be otherwise.
Wow. Okay, Bill, and then Joey. She keeps turning her hand on and off. I'm not sure, but anyway, Bill for now.
And Leslie raised her hand, I think, Mark. Leslie.
Okay, I didn't see that, but anyway, I'll catch her in a moment. Okay, Bill.
I just wanted to express that I've been sitting here and and listening to this, this interchange of ideas. And, to me, it's like it's it's adding dimension to my understanding of the Baha'i faith, giving it context in the broader realm of existence, and that sometimes you just want to immerse yourself in this stream of awareness that's going by from the different contributors, and just absorb that and let it impact you in the way that it does. You don't necessarily want to like jump in there and mess it all up with what you think and stuff. And I think that's probably, I mean, I don't want to speak for others, but I do think that that's probably the reality for a lot of people here that go to the trouble of coming here and paying astute attention without really having a whole lot to say. So I just want to, I don't want to see you having the idea that we're tired of you because you can't feed us enough. Okay.
No, I didn't have that sense actually, Bill. I was just worried that I had thrown too many things on you all at once tonight, and that I needed to step back and give people a chance to reflect on what I'd said and try and integrate it a little bit into their own experience. And one of the best ways to do that is to talk, right? To try and formulate some of your reactions to what I'm saying, rather than me just pumping out more. All right, we can postpone that more for later. And I also want to rethink some of it because I'm not sure I'm unpacking it sufficiently well. Sorry, Harold, that I'm still learning, right? So this is the first time I've ever taught a course on Buddhism, so I'm just making it up as I go along. And tonight I think I kind of blew it. But anyway, so Leslie, what were you going to say or ask?
This reminds me of discussions we had about the realms of Malakut, Jabarut, Lakut, when we got into dimensions above our logical, rational, material way of seeing the world. And I agree with David. I think that all of our education is logical, rational, material. And even the way we talk doesn't legitimize nonverbal knowledge or women's intuition or any other dimension beyond the material logical. And I mean, I hope we don't have to wait 200 years to recognize those dimensions, because I think they're there, very much unused. And sometimes words get in the way because you're trying to define it in some kind of logical, material, intellectual way, right? So, but I agree, we need to learn it, and we need teachers in some way, and they have been sort of wiped out of our the world we live in, that's materialistic and consumer and stuff oriented. They've been discounted so much. So Buddhism still has kind of access to that, in the sense that, through meditation and other means, you can kind of get closer to it than our world of existence generally allows or makes legitimate. So that's where I think all of us get stuck in the words, the attempts to explain. Right?
In a way, what we're doing by studying Buddhism, which is so radically different as a religion than our own, we're starting to break down some of our own preconceived notions about what religion is, which have been formed by our Bahai faith, and if we were a previous religion, Christianity or Muslim or whatever it happens to be. they come with their own limitations. And so by exposing yourself to more religions and their terminology, you start to break out some of those conceptions and you see them as limited. And then another religion says things more adequately about certain topics that you can use that will help to deepen you in your own faith. So Joey, you had your hand up twice, so I'm thinking you still have a niggling thing you want to say.
Well, I was looking at or thinking of this difference between whether it's intellectual or experiential, and we're looking at Buddhism, and you were talking about people being trained, but there must be those who have been attracted to the Buddhist faith before they ran into a teacher who had some sort of experience. I don't know whether that's true or not. Any idea?
Ashoka was like that.
Ooh, sorry?
Ashoka.
Ashoka, yeah. Yeah, he was a classic example of somebody who was, I mean, a world conqueror, really, and very bloodthirsty. Suddenly had a complete change in thinking and became this benevolent disseminator of the Buddhist faith. Many of the countries in Asia only learned about Buddhism through the people that he sent to them. Even Sri Lanka was in that case. So it is possible. It's rare because most people grew up in a Buddhist environment, and so they may not have met their individual teacher for a while, but they certainly are familiar with that teacher-disciple relationship and how essential it is in Buddhism. So, oh, there's Heather.
Heather has her hand up.
Yeah, I just saw that now. Okay.
I think that something I find difficult is that I'm not used to thinking this way. And what I'm trying to do is take not only Buddhism, but what we've done on Hinduism and mystical Islam, and try and make it one. And do you know what I mean? As a way of understanding the world, because the idea of unity, that there must be a way, because there is one God, and these are all ways of understanding God, to find a way to put it together. But my brain and my heart are not used to doing that. They're used to thinking logically. They're used to, if this was a course on the history of Buddhism, like, I'd be really, I'd be in it, right? I'd be like, or Buddhist practices or something. But all those are actually just, as we know, the trappings, the outsides. This is what the core is. And that's what's hard, because I'm not used to dealing with that. I'm finding a way for me to inculcate this, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And I'm proud of you for saying it. For admitting that it's tough, because it is tough. So before I come to Harold, I want to just make a plea to those people like Margaret and Lisa and Marie and Hangame and Peter, who haven't said a word tonight. Think about what you would like to say before you close down in 8 minutes.
Okay, all right. I'm going to take everybody off in a totally different direction.
Here we go.
Oh, here we go. So this is my light reading.
New Scientist, okay.
And it basically, it's in the pages of that sort of magazine, you don't see mention of spiritual or God or anything else. But scientists are out on the edge of what they understand, and they don't know how to describe it. And one of the articles in this one had to do with artificial reality and simulations. And are we actually living in some sort of computer simulation? And there's a great overlord that sort of made this, and at some point we're going to all realize this, and it's all made up out of the mind, I guess, of the enlightened soul from the 18th century to the 21st century. But you kind of read that and go, why don't you go and think about Buddhism or mystical Islam, or read something that people have been thinking about for thousands of years and kind of ground yourself instead of making it all up.
I like it. I have to agree that that's a good strategy.
In other words, get real.
Real, but like,
Ground yourself in reality.
like, well, in some, but it's not all what we can see, right? It's not all the scientific method. And that if you can't prove it and you can't test it, it doesn't exist.
But you see, that's one of the points Wilbur's going to make, is that there are different ways of testing and verifying things like meditation and things like the imaginal realm.
Well, we're all told now to get mindful.
Well, they are, and that's a straight steal from Buddhism.
Sure, we're all supposed to be mindful, but we're mindful by sitting there and thinking about what our great toe feels and what the bottom of our foot feels like now. And can we gradually go up our left leg and then our right leg? Like, it's all
Flatland, right?
It's all flatland.
Wilbur's flatland.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I think David wants to get in on the conversation here. David,
Or mastery.
Or mastery, yeah. Oh, you're not, you're muted.
Oh, mastery's around. I'm the visible person.
Yeah.
Well, I guess 2 points. First of all, the issue of the harmony of science and religion. And I don't know exactly whether it's said, but that when they are harmonized, there would be a great light in the world. And secondly, Abdul Baha said that he yearned for the day where science would investigate divine realities as it has investigated material realities. I certainly agree very much with what Margaret's saying. I think the criticism here is that science and scientists are taking very small baby steps. And because of the separation of science and religion, they're reinventing the wheel that doesn't have to be reinvented. No, I certainly agree with her. It's in some ways it becomes childish, and but in reality, of course, the scientific method, the true scientific method, would be very, I think, very beneficial to the study of religion.
Well, I would certainly agree with that.
Yes, well, but exactly how to do it, that's the question.
Yeah.
But the other thing that fits in here is, of course, what Abdul Baha talked about, what he said, the East and the West must unite, must embrace like lovers. And, you know, Margaret's comment and David and so on and so forth is how unbalanced we are in the West in terms of rationality. And we've lost the power. I mean, this is a huge generalization, but the analytical mind of the West is so out of balance with our intuitive faculties and our spiritual faculties. And I think this is why Abdul Baha talked about the East and the West embracing, and why it's hard for us, because these things are foreign to many Westerners. They're just not like these in the New Science. What's the name of the magazine? The New Science or the New Scientist? Yeah. Yeah, they want to do everything rationally. It's all analytical. It's not experiential, and it is childish, and it's not real in many, many ways. You know, it's like describing what grapes look like and how they're grown, and as opposed to actually eating the grape, you know. So, but I think this unity of East and West fits in here very well. And of course, it is challenging because the East is not just Islam, which is so familiar to Baha'is. It's Buddhism, it's Hinduism, and other religions. So, you know, it's a challenge. It is hard.
Oh, Joey, okay, you got your hand up.
It's difficult for me too, because I love the experiential, but then sometimes when you're in the intellectual and you're learning, it's incredibly exciting. So it isn't, you know, that's why it's the East and the West, because both can provide that just delight for your mind.
That's what I get out of it. I find it really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Well, what about Marie or Hangame or Peter or Zilda or Nina? Any comments before we break for a month?
Well, I'll jump in and make a few comments. My comments will be very brief, but you know, my experience of the course, of this opportunity to do this course with you, is it's like a gift, where I'm exposed to a stream of knowledge and of awareness about things that I may have thought about in past, but I haven't had the opportunity to delve into to any depth. And this course is offering me the opportunity to do that. And I feel that I'm here mostly to listen and to learn, and then to go away and to reflect on what we have covered. And I guess as a result, I'm not contributing very much to the general discussion, but yes, if you feel that there's a place for that also, I'm happy to continue.
Well, please don't feel in the least guilty about not contributing. That's because if everybody in the group contributed, we'd never get through any of the material I wanted to present. But anyway, you said you had more than one comment, though. What else did you want to make?
Well, no, that was basically, those were my comments, really.
Well,
Yes.
I'm delighted that you're finding this to be a gift. I feel honored by that. That's wonderful.
Well,
I feel appreciated. Oh, it's great. Okay, anybody else?
May I say something as well? I'm really in awe as well. And I feel like I don't know anything when I come to your classes. I have so much to learn. I'm trying to soak it all up, really. And about like all these different like aspects of Buddhism, that it's like being empty, being kind of, you know, humble, the Four Noble Truths, all these things, like they really hit home as Baha'is. So it's really like in a different way, we are getting to know our own faith better. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mark. It's really, really, you're having a deep impact on us, even though we don't say anything. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Well, yes, Yeah, Max Muller, who's been called the father of comparative religion, the great German, Anglo-German scholar who published an encyclopedic sacred books of the East, translations of Hindu scriptures. He said, he who knows one religion knows none. So I'm following along with, and Abdul Baha actually in American Promulgation of Universal Peace, you can read how he recommends the study of comparative religion. And he had in mind, as he himself said, to abolish prejudice, which was one of the reasons that he felt it was useful to study comparative religion. So I'm agreeing 100% with Hangame that when we study these other religions, we make correlations between them and our own faith. And sometimes they correlate very well and we get new insights, and sometimes they don't. And that's just all part of the process of the independent investigation of truth.
David Oak, you had your hand up for a bit.
I was thinking maybe I should, yeah, in terms of experience, science is experience because it involves experimentation. You know, the difference between, let's say, Plato and Aristotle and Socrates, who, you know, started philosophy, it was based just on reason and logic. But it wasn't until you got into the Renaissance that reason and logic was combined with experimentation. I think too, like scientists or science can fall prey to the same corruptions that the clergy fall prey to in religion. You know, that you have an awful lot of ritual, you have the established order and so on and so forth. And I think, you know, the problem, I'm sorry, I forget her name, was reading The New Scientist. But again, like The New Scientist is based, you know, the normal scientific orthodoxy is, you know, that's what it's based on. And it doesn't, so it discusses these other things through the point of view of their orthodoxy. They don't look at it from the, let's say, the orthodoxy or the mentality of someone who's religious or who studies mysticism, for example. I remember Jack at one time, yeah, you said that, Shoghi Effendi said that science in the future would be intensely spiritual. Maybe you could confirm that.
Well, I think he said that what Shoghi Effendi meant by that, I would have to look at the exact quote, was that science would be used to validate spiritual experience and spiritual reality. How exactly that's going to take place, I'm not exactly sure, but we know that there will be a mutual beneficial effect between science and religion. Strangely enough, the people that are writing mostly in the field of science and religions are theologians and philosophers of religion. There are a few exceptions, like Ian Barbour, who wrote a very, very good book on science and religion. He was if he's still alive, I'm not sure he's still alive. I have the book in my library. He was both a professor of physics as well as a professor of religion. So how rare is that? So he had the background to speak on both fields. And David, I like very much what you said about, you know, that the scientists are somewhat like the clergy in that they have their norms and values and their ways of doing things. We forget that in the history of science, going way back to the Greeks, many scientists opposed new theories. You know, if we have the idea that scientists are all enlightened and they accept everything right away, the history of science doesn't show that, particularly the history of medical science, where I forget who developed germ theory, was Pasteur or somebody before Pasteur, but they all ridiculed that idea at first, you know, until it was proven. So we shouldn't think that, you know, scientists are immune from the same errors that they also resist change. And I think Einstein said that there were only 5 people in the beginning who understood his theory of relativity. So.
Yeah, like my background is economics, and they're very rigid. And, you know, that somebody did a study on how the innovation of ideas at universities, and they found it followed people retiring, that sort of the old guard, or, no, I can't say that word with this group. You know, they would just hang on to what they learned in grad school and drum people out of the profession if they differed from it. And then it wasn't until a new generation came in that ideas would change. I was reading a little bit, I was hearing a lecture on the history of science, and that the scientific method basically was developed in the 1400s, in the last of the 1400s. And it wasn't until the 1600s that it became accepted at universities, you know, 200 years later.
Yeah.
It might have been earlier in the Islamic world.
Yeah. Well, actually, not this. I'm talking about the scientific method itself.
Yeah, I believe in the Islamic world, there were a number of scientists, and of course, most of them were also theologians to some extent, and physicians. And
I'm trying to draw a distinction here between the philosophers and scientists.
That's recent.
And I think the scientists in the Islamic world would be more philosophers than scientists.
Both.
Although I don't know, don't really know what I'm talking about.
I'll try and bring next time some names and
Yeah.
work that was done by a number of them during the golden age of Islam. You know, because there was one, for instance, who understood the circulatory nature of how blood flows around the body a long time before what's his name did it in England, and others as well.
But I would like to, if I may, I would like to say that, you know, not all scientists really are materialists. And for example, in physics, in the 1930s, you know, Erwin Schrödinger, you know, and this is all to do with quantum mechanics, and Niels Bohr, you know, they were very much influenced by Hinduism. And so that much of what they did, they were still very much aware of and influenced by Eastern religions, and I think Buddhism as well. So I think, you know, this whole thing of the spiritual, I think that it's spiritual reality. I think that some of them were very much aware of that. I'd just like to say that Abdu'l-Baha, you know, and this is in some answered questions, you know, he was asked about religion, and he gave a very concise quote unquote definition of what religion really is. And I'd never seen this before, but he said, religion has to do with the connection between things, has to do with the relationship between one thing and another. And he said that Baha'u'llah, he knew you know, what the universe, was basically, what the relationships were. And, but Abdul Baha said, he said, this is what religion really is. It has to do with the relation between things. And I thought that was extremely interesting because for me, it does tie in with the scientific method, you see. So the scientific method is a great tool, but it's not everything. And I think that the early, including Einstein, these earlier scientists, they knew this. They were very much aware of this. Einstein, for example, he was very much of the reality and of the importance of imagination. So of the faculty of the imagination. So it isn't just a question of reason, So I
Right.
just wanted to mention that.
Okay, folks, I think we're probably all tired by this point. So
No, we're just getting started.
yeah, well, you can have the conversation on your own. I'm gonna go. So
Well, thanks, Mark.
I think I'm going to enjoy this next month away from giving talks because it's quite a bit of pressure to create material that's going to cover an hour and a half and keep people interested and informed in a linear way. So I think I need that time to step away and refresh myself so that I can come back and be enthusiastic about the topic and get to the heart of what you need to know. So I'll rethink what I was doing in this class and consider how I will make it work the next time. I've already written the next class beyond it, but I've got lots of things that I have yet to consider. And it's the relationship between Buddhist teachings that we're presenting and the Baha'i faith that I really am wanting to focus on.
Yeah.
So, but that's going to take some real thought, stepping back from Buddhism and seeing where the ground lays and how in the world we can bring these two separate things together without damaging either one of them in any significant way. How can we honor their truths together? So that's my task in the next month. Anyway, all of you are now going to be in the atmosphere of the fast, whether you're actually fasting or not. You're going to be having all that spiritual benefit pouring all over you for the next month. So you'll all come back as transformed people.
Some of us are too old.
Oh, no, you don't have to fast to be a beneficiary.
Yeah. It was too old. No,
So anyway,
we're
enjoy your time, and it'll probably be a lot warmer by the time we're ready to see each other again.
Yes, enjoy your time, Mark, and remember that Abdul Baha said the teacher gets 90% of the benefit and the student gets about 10%. So you're no, I don't know if he used those percentages, but he said in teaching, the teacher benefits probably more than the student in some ways, and I think that's probably very true.
Yeah,
right. Maybe.
Anyway, you've done a great job.
Yes,
Mark.
yes.
Very, very great job. And I know that there have been times that has not been easy for you. And it was you're leading all of this. And it's certainly when it comes to wisdom and a lot of the other sessions we've had in other areas, it's been not easy at all. So I think we appreciate so much what you have done. If it weren't the case, I don't think many of us would be here.
On this Zoom, or anyway,
Thank
Okay,
you.
guys.
Good night. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good
Take
night,
care of
everybody.
yourselves.
Good, everybody.
We'll see you in a month.
See you next time.
Bye bye.